Hello, and welcome to the Desire of Horror podcast, the show where we review horror movies and discuss what these films say about the nature of human desire. I'm Charlotte, and with me always is Marty. How are you doing?
I'm good, and you?
I'm doing great. And Andrea is joining us again. How are you doing today, Andrea?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm excited for this movie. This was a big one.
Woo! This is a heavy hitter, as they say. I'm super excited too. Um, this evening, we will be discussing 1973's The Exorcist. So, this movie is the movie, right? For a long time, this is was at the very top of my list. The scariest movie that I had ever seen. Um, that's kind of dwindled down a little bit. It's still high up on the list, but it's not number one anymore. But it's still a great movie. So, Andrea, this was a first time watch for you, right?
Yep, this was my first time. I was like so nervous going into this because it's something you hear about it,
Right.
as being the legendary movie, and I really thought I was going to be traumatized or something from
Right.
watching this,
Right.
but yes, but
You
not
survived.
traumatized. Yes, I survived. I absolutely survived. Definitely was shocked at a few of the scenes that we'll talk about, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad. I'm very glad that I bit the bullet and actually watched the movie.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, production notes. Release date of The Exorcist is December 26th, 1973, the day after Christmas. Coincidence? I don't think it is. I think this was very much planned to be the day after Christmas. I could be wrong though. What do you guys think? Did you guys have any thoughts about that?
Yeah,
Oh, it's
Christ and the
Boxing Day in the
Antichrist.
UK, right? So
Uh-huh.
Boxing Day in the UK. Yeah, there
the
you
big
go.
holiday. I think
Right,
that's like
right,
back then too, and that'd be like instead of well, I think now, right? People kind of get bored on Christmas Day after a
right.
while, so they end up going to the movies. But back then, I'm sure that people were a little bit more um, honoring the holiday. So maybe
Right, right.
Boxing Day was a really big day.
Big day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think it's weird that this like super like controversial movie having to do with the devil is coming out the day after Christmas. But this movie is directed by William Friedkin, screenplay written by William Blatty based off of his novel of the same title. This movie is rated R for graphic violence, disturbing images, and profanity. And there is a lot of that in this
Oh
movie.
yeah, there's a lot.
Whew,
That's part of
man.
what shocked me. I'm not like a prude, but goodness,
It's a
this is
lot.
yeah.
It's a lot. And let me just say, the first time I saw this movie, so same thing, like I have heard about this movie forever. Like I can't even remember a time when I didn't hear about this movie. Even before I saw this movie, I heard about this movie and but I probably didn't see it until I was even like a teenager. And even then, I was like, whoa, like this is a lot. Like it's a lot. And I think especially given the time frame when this movie
Right.
came out and depending on what age you see it at, like just all of the graphic imagery in the profanity and all of that is just a horror show within itself, not to mention you're dealing with demons and the devil and everything. So it's this movie's a whole lot, but it's great. All right, so the film opens in northern Iraq, where archaeologist and Catholic priest Father Lancaster Marin, played by Max van Souden, is participating in an excavation among the ancient ruins of Hatra. So, any thoughts about how this movie opens up in northern Iraq? Like, Andrea, since this is the first time you saw this movie, were you kind of like, what's happening here? Like,
Yes.
did you?
Yes, very
Yeah.
confused. At first I was like, shit, is that get the right movie? Like, or
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
remember hearing about this. So when I was actually experiencing it, definitely a little confused. Although then I immediately was like, oh, he's gonna find some amulet or something, or he's gonna release, like,
Hmm.
I was just like, when he's reaching down into the little cave, I'm like, he's about to release some bad, mojo into the world.
Right,
Um,
right.
I do, one little side note here about him, the Father Merrin, is that I read that he's much younger than he
Yes,
portrayed there. He was only
yes.
44.
He was,
He
yes,
played the best old guy. I mean, I swear
man.
to God, I was like, man, he looks like an old Henry Fonda, or like,
Yeah,
just but like the way he walked, the way he, just, I don't know,
yeah,
tottered around there. But yeah, so I'm doubly impressed, with
yeah.
that scene.
Yeah, he was like somewhat young when he made this film, and they did a great job of making him look really, really old.
Yeah.
But yeah, like for me, what I remember, like I said, when I saw this movie as a teenager, I thought like this whole beginning part, I was like, oh my God, like this is so boring. Like let's just like get to the good stuff. Primarily because I kind of didn't know what was going on. Like I knew that he found like the talisman and he saw the statue, but it wasn't until I got older when I saw how all of that kind of tied together, and I was like, oh. Now as an older person, I'm like, this is a great opening to a movie. It's really good. Um, and during the dig, Father Marin, he uncovers a mysterious stone talisman depicting a winged creature, and this discovery immediately unsettles him. We see him take some pills, so right away we know like his health's not good. We know that that's gonna come
Mhm.
back later probably, and he looks really too old to be out there doing this dig.
Yeah.
Um, but moments later, Father Marin silently stands before a massive ancient statue of that same figure, hinting that he recognizes that the evil that it represents. And also, I didn't notice this until I got a little bit older. Also, the sound design for that time that we're in Iraq is so good. I mean, the sound
Yeah.
design for this whole movie is wonderful, but just like there's all these kind of like strange sounds, and you hear the sound and then it immediately shows you what's making the sound, but at first before you know, you're just kind of like what is happening. Like there's just a lot
Yeah.
of different sounds, and the way that's
Yeah.
layered, it's very
Yeah. It's got
unsettling.
texture, and it's got,
Yeah,
like, just a lot, like you said, a lot of layers, and the details were amazing. I mean, the
yeah.
clock, that
Oh my gosh,
the
yes.
clock scene there was there was a one line, when I think he brings the talisman back, to
Mm-hmm.
the or to his, like, workshop, I guess. And I think the other guy that's with him mentioned something about, fighting evil with evil, or,
Yes,
that,
yes.
it was one that stuck out to me right away, too, because I thought of so much of symbolism, in, religion, and well,
Right.
any religion. There's those protective, symbols of, something that's supposed to be scarier than what you're like what you're defending against. So I was wondering if that's what the talisman was, or, that's what they
Yeah.
had uncovered.
I'm sure that they're calling. I'm sure that they're calling this a talisman mostly because most people
They
just
are. Yeah.
Yeah.
use the terms interchangeably, but
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter. That's just a nitpicky thing. But the interesting thing to me is this connection to Iraq because, well, for one, the priest is deliberately um, modeled on probably the most famous archaeologist priest that in the Catholic Church. This guy named Teilhard de Chardin, who did most of his digs in China, actually, was a Jesuit. Um, but there's not a whole lot of parallels other than this marriage of science and religion that he represented. So like weirdly, it's The Exorcist 2 that actually explores Teilhard's ideas, but in a really weird and hokey way. But like anyway, so Marin is supposed to, like, there were a lot of academic priests that weren't necessarily just studying religion, but could be on an archaeological dig, but he clearly recognizes like, some enemy, I guess. I think they say later that he had faced off with Pazuzu before or something like that.
Yeah, right.
The other like nitpicky religious studies correction I want to make is like Pazuzu, certainly was maybe a demon in ancient Mesopotamia, but was not like our modern notion of the devil. That gets like put together much later. So like to try to establish that this is the same Pazuzu that is going to show up in Georgetown. I don't know if that you're necessarily even trying to do that, or if it's just like a reference. That I say, does he come back to Georgetown with him, or is it just like a I guess this is talismanic in this sense that it's showing the future, like that it's showing what's the battle that's going to come or whatever. But in ancient Mesopotamia, this was first a god associated with the wind, and then probably because of that, but who knows, got grouped together with plague and infant death and stuff like that. And so, yeah, just like Andrea said, to ward off the plague, you might put that in your house or whatever,
Hmm.
or use that as a ward.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
there's that confusion though, kind of deliberately introduced, right? So that's why I was a little confused about the connection between the scene in
Yeah,
Iraq and then,
Yeah.
um, you know, bring it over to Georgetown, because your assumption is, okay, either this demon was brought over or whatever, and it does seem that this is a demon, but then he makes Reagan later, say, kind of claim that he is the devil. Now he's just
Right.
saying that, maybe because he's
Yeah.
clever demon, but
Right.
whatever. But so I think that adds more confusion, to it too. That is saying it. What is this?
just he's variously
Are these demons
identified.
all? Yeah.
Yeah. And so I mean we'll get to it later, but like one of the identifications is Legion, who does make a appearance in the Bible. So, like that's definitely not Pazuzu for a lot of reasons. I mean, there's no straight direct lineage there; just got thrown into that whole mix. So we'll look at that later. So,
Yeah.
and then I think somebody says, Marin or one of them says like, what's in her claims to be the devil himself, which again, that's not Legion either. So it's just like really
Mhm.
confusing. But like for most people, they're just gonna in their mind say, "Oh, Pazuzu, Legion, the actual devil, or whatever." So yeah, but that's how we're supposed to group it together.
The film then shifts to Georgetown in Washington, D.C., where successful actress Chris McNeil, played by Ellen Burstyn, is filming a movie directed by her friend Burke Dennings, played by Jack McGowan. We see her on the movie set, and I really do love Ellen Burstyn in this role. I just like her as an actress
Yeah.
altogether, actor altogether, but she owned this shit, man. She is amazing in this part. I mean, I feel what she feels throughout this whole entire movie. We see Chris walking down the streets of Georgetown, heading home as the iconic Tubular Bells plays. And are
Cool
you
song.
familiar with? Yeah, awesome. Are you familiar with tubular bells, Andrea?
Yeah,
Like,
John Carpenter totally copied. But anyways, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's where I mean, as soon as
Um,
that came on, I'm like, oh, all right,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
exactly where I've heard
yeah,
this from, and I am familiar with the actual like instrument, or in tone itself. But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, suddenly I was like, and it could have been, I felt like it could have been a hokey almost, sound, just because it was so
Right,
incongruent
right,
with the
right.
rest of like what was going on. You go from Iraq to then this peaceful thing in there, and then all of a sudden that music, but it worked. It worked completely in there. It was just like
Yeah,
one of those where I'm like, oh man, now it's gonna happen. Like whatever,
right.
something's coming, and yeah. So
Yeah.
that was a cool moment.
So it's like this section of this movie with her walking down the street and this Tubular Bells song playing. And the thing that's so crazy is that I remember watching this once again as a kid, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is so scary." Like I just thought the music and her walking down the street was just so sinister. And then as an adult, I listened to a whole podcast, like a whole two-part podcast on Tubular Bells, which is a 26 minute song that this guy made, playing all of these different types of instruments. And the part that we hear in this movie is roughly like maybe 7 minutes of the song. So it's and the song, the actual song Tubular Bells is like nothing like this piece of music. So it's really interesting. Like when I listen to that podcast and Marty, you listened to that same podcast, right? Where they kind of like broke down all the different
Mm,
parts of Tubular Bells.
I don't think so. I don't remember it anyway, but maybe.
Oh, I thought you did. I thought we had
Mhm.
talked about it
I
before.
did see something about it, and I was like, it was composed and performed by a very young man who was a savant, actually,
Yeah. It
and
was
who, and it
Mike
was,
Oldfield. Mike
and it certainly
Oldfield.
wasn't
And yeah,
perceived when it first came out as as
it's
sinister in any
not.
way. It's like a very beautiful piece of music. So
It's
somehow, yeah,
gorgeous. Yeah.
yeah.
And that's what I was trying to get at. I'm glad you kind of brought it up because if you listen to the whole entire song, it's not sinister at all. And then they took this like 5 to 7 minute clip of just the this part and it somehow just infused it with just horror. And so now every time you hear that part of Tubular Bells, you think of The Exorcist. You just have this feeling of dread. Chris is renting a large house where while she's shooting the film, and she lives there with her 12-year-old daughter Regan, played by Linda Blair, along with several members of the household staff. So I just wanted to kind of I never thought about this before, but I did think about this the last two times I watched The Exorcist. How do we feel about Chris, right? Like she's this really, successful actress. She's famous. You see a crowd when she's filming this movie, like there, and people are asking for her autograph and everything. How do you feel like that ties into the story of what we know is going to happen? Anybody have any thoughts on that or
She does eventually conquer the evil, whatever. It's not
right,
her that's doing the
right,
exorcism, but she gets the help. She gets the
yes,
she keeps pursuing. It doesn't show her as neglectful. It shows the
right,
dad as neglectful, if anything else. So it's not
right,
like the typical, or stereotypical hero. Um, I mean, especially I guess at that time too, it would be those kind of characters or people existed. And so to
right,
actually acknowledge that, yes, there's single moms that are, are working,
yeah,
they are successful, at what they do, but gosh, it's really difficult and really, really hard. So
yeah,
I think it was, if anything, I didn't see signs that it was, suggesting that she was a bad mom in any way
right,
or that she shouldn't be doing, what she was doing. It
right.
was kind of like, if anything else, it was just showing that she's a total badass.
That's what I put in my notes. What did I said Chris is a bad bitch. That's what I
Yeah.
put in my notes because like I feel the same way. But I just wanted to ask that because I listened to another podcast where they didn't say that they agreed with this, but they just brought up the point that maybe what this film was trying to say was that, with the wave of feminism and the wave of like the single mom and working mom, maybe this is a, cautionary tale of, you know, women, caring more about their careers and their
Yeah.
kids. And this
And
is
their
what
kids are getting
happens when you
possessed
do
by
that. You get
demons.
possessed by the demon. Even though she was a single mom, even though she was a successful actress, she loved her daughter. Like, there's no way. I mean, I like this movie too because you see that in this beginning part, the relationship, the deep bond that she has with Regan, and their playfulness,
Yep.
she's a good mom, but she's also a playful mom too, So I really like how William Friedkin kind of gets us introduced to these characters. I'm all in. I care. Like I have stake in this now. I care about Regan. I care about Chris. So I think that this movie does a really good job with that. So while exploring the basement, Regan discovers a Ouija board. This scene is especially interesting because she unknowingly breaks several of the most commonly cited Ouija board rules. First, she plays alone. That's a big no-no. It's a big no-no. And that's something that her mom even points out. You're not supposed to play with the Ouija board alone. Number two, she openly asks if, quote unquote, anyone is there, essentially inviting any spirit to come through the board and communicate with her. So
Reagan, Reagan,
definitely a
Reagan.
no-no. I know. And finally, she removes the planchette without saying goodbye. You have to say goodbye. You leave everything wide open if you don't. Um, and that's something that a lot of like paranormal people will warn against. So
Did you guys
she
ever
just,
play with Ouija boards? Like, is
oh
this
my God,
like
no.
I remember
No,
I had a friend who
no.
had one, and I swear to God, I could not. Like my Catholic schoolgirl upbringing, I was
No.
like, put that shit away.
Yeah.
Dude, I think there was like nothing scarier, which is so ridiculous. But it was like I was like, well, why don't you just invite Satan over for dinner?
Well,
Like,
that's what I
just
said.
like.
Exactly. Like I remember like before I saw this movie, like I knew what this movie like that was a big thing when we were kids. Like
Right.
she played with the Ouija board and she's possessed. Like I already knew that part of the movie just from friends or whatever. But same thing, like we were at a sleepover party and somebody wanted to play with the Ouija board and I'm like, I'm gonna go home. Like I'm
Mhm.
gonna leave the party right now. And then funny story is that my daughter, when she was little, she did leave a sleepover because they got the Ouija board out. She came
Who's
back
buying
home.
Ouija boards like for their kids?
I don't
Come
know.
on.
And I told her, I was like, no,
Satan
good.
Maybe it's just
worshippers.
appear. Yeah,
Yeah,
devil
I'm like,
worshippers, and it just
yeah.
appears in your basement. Like I don't think anyone actually buys it. It
No,
just
I
like
just
shows up
appears.
in the
It's in
games
basements and attics to just magically appear.
right
But
next to the
yeah,
Jumanji board. So, like,
that's
I
good.
avoided, whatever
did you
perils I
hear it
could have.
calling your name too?
Yeah, I
Like,
just looked at it like this is not a fun game. Like, you can't do. There's no pieces really.
yeah.
Uh,
Right.
not like
Oh,
if
there's
I
only
Exactly.
Satan.
There's
That's
only
the
yeah
piece you
Satan.
need.
That's
yeah.
all. Yeah, that's the other player is Satan.
Yeah, it's just you and Satan.
Mhm.
Right.
Satan doesn't need any pieces.
Right. So, whether you believe in Ouija boards or not, I do believe that this film is strongly suggesting that these mistakes are what opened the door for the evil demon to come in and get into Reagan. Um, Reagan tells her mother that the quote unquote friendly spirit that she has been communicating with is named Captain Howdy. And then during the same sequence, she proudly shows off a paper mache sculpture that bears a striking resemblance to the statue that we saw Father Marin look at in northern Iraq. Did you guys
Doesn't
pick
have
up
a
on
I
snake
that?
penis.
no, I
It
didn't.
doesn't have a snake penis, but it does have the wings and the bird head. The bird head.
Snake
Yeah.
penises were very popular in ancient
Yes.
Mesopotamia, and just
Yeah.
penises in general were a big thing.
Okay.
So,
I don't know. I would hope that Chris would have said something if
I'm sure.
if her
I hope
daughter
that she would have.
picks
Yeah,
this like thing with a big giant snake penis, but I
exactly.
don't know. They allowed the Ouija board down there, so
She's playing with her with the Ouija board. I know.
yeah.
Um,
the reason why the book was written is this is a Georgetown student who admired the Jesuits and wanted to make,
William Blatty, is
he
that who you're
oh
referring
yeah,
to?
William Blatty, yeah, and he wanted to make, evil evil again and like make people respect it, so that
Mm.
people got the idea that, like, the world isn't as disenchanted as you think. Like, you think everything's got a scientific explanation, but it doesn't. So, you're going to see the impotence of science as things get worse.
So meanwhile, we are introduced to Father Damien Karras, played by Jason Miller, a Jesuit priest and psychiatrist who counsels fellow priests at Georgetown University. He travels to New York City to visit his elderly, ailing mother and confides in a colleague that he's experienced a serious crisis of faith. Later, Chris hosts a dinner party attended by several guests, including Father Joseph Dyer, played by Father William O'Malley. So, interestingly enough, William O'Malley was an actual Jesuit priest who also served as a technical advisor on this film. So I always thought that was interesting that he was, and I could like he does. He just, I mean, I could if you told me Father Karras was an actual priest too, I would believe you as well because he did a great job, and Jason Miller's phenomenal actor, mostly a stage actor, and he did a great job as playing Father Karras. But this Father Dyer is great in this movie too. Like, there's no bad actors in this movie. Everybody did a really good job. So, in the middle of the festivities, Regan unexpectedly walks downstairs, looks directly at Father Dyer, and calmly tells him, "You're gonna die up there," before suddenly urinating on the living room floor. And this is a scene that traumatized me when I first saw this movie because I was just like, something's wrong with this kid. 'Cause, anytime somebody is like just doing something that is not right, it makes me like feel weird. And this scene definitely with her coming downstairs and having an accident on the floor, it just makes me feel like really weird uh inside. So, what did you guys think about that scene?
It was,
Establishes
it was
this idea that you're going to have a kid suffering that you can't help and
Hmm.
that you don't know what's going on. But like, I mean, there is no worse nightmare than
Right.
watching
Right.
somebody who, and you can't even give it a name for most of the movie,
Right.
because like well, the medical industry or, whatever, certainly cannot give it a name. They name it all kinds of things, but none of those fit so like you try to group together symptoms and signs and be like, this is what it is. But even after you've named it, you just see them like making up shit as they go along.
yeah.
Like how is this, going to cause this or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Andrea, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to just agree with that too. I think there's sort of I think what leads then into, sort of that diagnostic thing
Hmm.
because, you can, that's the first that we know that really something is really bad
Right.
or
Yeah.
is looking
Yeah.
because, Chris gives her a bath.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that scene was very poignant actually to me, too, is because, there's just certain moments, between parents and their children. And,
Oh yeah.
the only thing you can do in some situations,
Yes.
like, okay, so she's come downstairs in the middle of a dinner party and peed on the bed. And that was another area where I was thinking Chris is such a great mom, really, because she's like,
Right.
forget the
She
party
didn't
that's
yell
going
at
on.
her. She didn't say,
Mm-mm.
"What are you doing?" She's just like, "Oh my gosh, like let me
Right.
I need to go deal with this." And yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah. And
agree
like,
with you. Like, she puts her
comforter.
in the bath, comforts her. And I mean, as a mom, Marty as a dad, I'm sure you guys have had those. I've had those nights where my kids have
Mhm.
woken up sick and there's like, puke all over the place, and all you can do is clean them up, make them feel safe and secure, clean up and you
Yeah.
just, hope that they start to, get feeling better, or take them to the doctor. But you do really feel helpless in that moment. You want to take that pain away from them, and you can't, and all you can really do is comfort them. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think there was a lot of parallels for me that started like that parallel of a lot of the feelings of that helplessness and when especially if
yes.
it's like most of us have had like from a illness standpoint, obviously, like our most people don't have their kids possessed, but
Right.
um
Right. Right.
but if it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like an illness or condition or something that even if they do identify, first there's the frustration of what is wrong, what is
Yes.
happening here, what is
Right.
the actual cause of this. And then if you do get an answer, even if you do get an answer, like, well, what can you do about it? And just
Hmm.
that, I mean, there's nothing, there's like, nothing worse than just being that sense of helplessness.
So later that night, after the guests have left, Chris checks on Reagan and discovers that her bed is shaking violently. Around the same time, Father Dyer comforts Father Karras, who blames himself for not being with his mother when she died. And I do really, once again, this is another scene that I really, really enjoy. I just feel this genuine friendship between these two priests. And even if they weren't priests, even if they were just like regular guys, I just think they would just, this friendship, it just feels real. Um, and I love that also when Father Dyer, I love the fact that he puts Father Karras to bed. He's obviously like maybe a little drunk, maybe a little distraught, puts him to bed, takes off his shoes,
Mhm.
and just, tries to comfort him. And then uh, Father Karras says, "Don't steal my shoes." So I like that like banter and that friendship that these two priests have with each other. It's a very poignant scene.
Mhm.
As the days pass, Regan's behavior becomes increasingly disturbing. She grows aggressive, violent, and completely unlike herself. Doctors perform numerous medical examinations but can find no physical explanation for her condition. During one examination, she displays incredible strength, speaks with like this vulgarity, like this awful language, and just begins talking in a very unnatural, terrifying voice. There's a lot of like, I know there's like this one scene where she like kind of like whips her head to the side, and there's this kind of like guttural groan that comes out of her voice. And that's when you're like, oh, hell, like this is something a little bit different than just nerves or whatever
Right.
they were trying to say. Like, this is some
I
serious
question their
shit here.
diagnostic ability right there. Like, okay, when they're like, "Oh, this is just psychological," I'm like,
It's
"No,
nerves.
that's
It's
not."
just
Like, what
nerves.
the hell? My
Right.
kid starts talking like that. I mean,
Yeah.
if you just know that a child could not possibly speak like that.
Right.
Can we talk about the voice for just a second? Like
Yeah,
too, like about
absolutely.
that voice was done by Mercedes McCambridge, right? But
Hmm.
what she had to do to get to that voice, I guess she used to have kind of a gravelly voice like that when she was younger and an alcoholic.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
for this movie, I, read that she said, okay, I'll do it, but in order to do that, I'm going to have to relapse completely on all my bad
Yeah.
habits. And
Yep.
she hadn't had a drink for like, I don't know how long. Um, but she knew that she couldn't recreate that voice without a lot of alcohol, cigarettes, raw
Yep.
eggs. Ugh.
Yeah. Oh. Oh.
So
Oh.
gross. Um, and then and being like physically restrained at times, to like
Right.
to make that sound. Um, which is yeah, it's a super creepy, um, you know, amazing evil voice, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um, oof.
Just
That's
with
just
a
I think
little voice modulator. So you would have just waited a little bit longer.
When was the
technology could
voice
have saved her.
modulator invented, Marty?
I don't know exactly, but like in the 80s, I'll just say that most of the artists on the Wax Tracks like record label, it was sometimes called industrial music, they all imitated that voice. Like, and they didn't have to do shit except sing into a voice modulator and
Yeah.
make your voice sound all evil like for you, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think, I mean, like in combination with, so there was her voice that was pretty extreme, and then, but they had like sounds of pigs being led to slaughter because
Yes.
there was like this the
Yes.
sounds when Regan is
Like
possessed is just
yeah. Like the
yeah, like
squealing, squelching kind of
yeah,
sounds. Yeah.
And it may be worthwhile to say that Vladdy like based this whole thing on his for some reason it became totally fascinated with the actual in quotes exorcism that happened in Maryland.
Yeah,
And so not too far away.
I thought his book was based off of that. Like
Yeah, very, I mean, very loosely. If you look at the actual case,
inspired
yeah.
by,
yeah, like he
right.
I mean,
embellished a
Yeah.
there's
lot of
some of
the
the things, and this one, I mean, so the exorcism winds up producing a lot of symptoms like this after the movie was made. But like, it's
Hmm.
kind of like amping up a lot of the symptoms or a lot of the things that were claimed about the boy. So speaking in a different voice, speaking in Latin, I guess the levitating to a degree, but like all these things
Yeah.
wound up with kind of other explanations,
Hmm.
like as it got looked into more. but like, there because there was a lot of fishy stuff going on because nobody in the 1940s the church didn't perform exorcisms, and the guy who performed the exorcism, the kid actually was a Lutheran, and they went and got a Catholic, and just like in the movie it was like, we don't do that, like we don't know how to do that. But then they found somebody who could have been a kook who would do it. And the question about the ambiguity of the whole situation is, yeah, like people turn to this, and so like one of the biggest criteria, supposedly, if the church is going to perform it, is you got to exhaust all the scientific
Right.
possibilities first, which like clearly had been done. And because the mom, she just became desperate. She just, she had tried everything medical. She was not a person of faith anyways. And so, you can see, Vladdy trying to set up like the failure of science and the victory of this, spiritual thing.
So while Regan is going through all of her medical procedures, we see this juxtaposition of scenes of Father Karras giving these sermons, right? And you can see visibly that he is just struggling, especially since after his mother passed away. And I like to I don't know if it was on purpose, I'm sure it was, but just the back and forth, like the ping pong between Regan and the father, and seeing them both struggle but in different ways, and knowing that they're gonna kind of like knowing what happens at the end, when the coming together, kind of, so to speak, of those two. I just find it really interesting, that set of scenes and those medical procedures. I don't know what they were
Oh God.
doing in
I think one was an
73.
MRI, and I
Old
think one
school
was a, yeah,
MRI, but then the
because
one thing where she gets like the dye thing in her neck,
I,
or
yeah,
I'm just
I
like,
think
what
that's why I
is
was
that?
thinking it was like an old
Is that
CT
it?
scan or an MRI where they were
With the
like,
dye, what they put the
right.
dye
That's the
in.
only thing I could imagine because I was like, okay,
Ugh.
like maybe before they realized you could just put it in her arm. You didn't have to go for a neck
And with
neck
the
vein
like
and let it
Well,
spread out like a
it
bubble.
yeah.
was clearly to make the medical. So like again, as a set up this juxtaposition between the medical procedure and the exorcism. So like the idea was like that an exorcism is this old, brutal, like idiotic, kind of like backwards way of doing things. But there was this attempt then to show that the medical uh,
Was just
procedures
as
were
barbaric.
just as barbaric and brutal
Yeah.
in a way. And I mean, and maybe Andrew, if you want to speak to this, just this aspect, just because you know, with all of your struggles with cancer, you've certainly seen a lot of that. I mean, I would imagine, speculating, you speak on it, but it would resonate to you. Like, yeah, these procedures all are maybe not barbaric, but like they're
No, but
really
they're
brutal,
sometimes, yeah, they can be, you always have to
dehumanizing.
weigh like, is even the diagnostic worse than,
Yeah.
the disease itself, or but
Right.
thankfully we've advanced quite a bit. That's why I was thinking of like some of those procedures that she was going through. I've gone through recently, and just like a much more modern thing. And I was like, thank God we've advanced because I cannot even imagine. Like even like one of the lamps was rusty. And I was thinking, oh, okay. I'm like, I
Yeah.
guess this was kind of before like a lot of plastics were used and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
everything was on metal cranks and just
Everything was so loud and
yes,
clanky and
yes.
like, yeah.
It reminded me so much of the movie Return to Oz. I remember
Oh
when
God, I haven't seen that in forever. That,
I
talk
was
about a horror movie.
oh hell yeah. I mean, it's like, because I think they use that same kind of concept, right? Of like, they had Dorothy was strapped down. She's in
Right.
all these rusty, terrifying machines, and for sure, I think that's what, like the imagery was trying to
Mm-hmm.
show like that sort of like trying to say that science and medicine, there's just some things that are beyond our ken and we can't not gonna be able to figure it out, and like torturing this little girl to get there, just to insist that that there is some kind of a medical reason,
Right.
I think was
Yeah.
sort of the point of that whole jargon there. But yeah, no, I was very grateful that my procedures were done in 2026
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
not
exactly. Right. Not in 73.
My dye was injected through my arm.
And not in your neck with your blood
No.
spurting out.
I had no blood spurting out except right before my surgery. There was a little blood, but that was about
But also, I mean, your experience too with sort of the what escapes the diagnosis or what escapes the plan. So like, okay, here's what it is, here's how it's going to go, or whatever. But then there's like, no, like things that should have been over are not over, like things that should
right.
have
Mm.
worked didn't work.
Mhm.
Like all this kind of stuff that, to me that just was very powerful. That's like the most powerful part of the movie. I mean, it's true for certainly in your situation that there's this like just this all this leftover stuff that the medical, you know,
Well, yeah,
things
you can't
can't do
get.
anything. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's and that I think definitely a point of this movie too is that there's a limit, to what we may think that we have a lot of control over or we've made a lot of advancements, but there's so many people that, experience where either, they have a relapse like I did and I've had, cancer twice. Um, but also people that
Even
don't
after
get
extreme
answers.
measures too. So it's
Yeah,
just like
yeah. I mean, like you get,
brutal,
you
like just crude cutting. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, just like, yeah. So yeah.
Right. I mean,
But,
even
yeah,
with
there was that very physical, brutality to the whole thing, really.
right.
That is like, the body, scars and the mutilation and all this kind of
Mhm.
stuff that appears on on Reagan or whatever, you think that we're so beyond our own bodies, but we're not.
And this is another section where I really feel for Chris. I mean, I feel it
Yes.
as a parent now. And that's one thing I always told Marty, like when we first started dating and we were talking about horror movies and everything, and I said that this was one of my all-time favorites, and but I see it from a different angle now. Like when I was younger watching this movie, I did not want to become possessed. Like that was my fear. I don't want to become possessed. Now as a mom, I don't want my child to become possessed. So it's like
Right.
it switches. And so I really feel Chris's help, like she's helpless. She's got like all of these doctors who are like mansplaining and
Hmm.
they don't even know what the hell they're talking about. Like they have no idea. And it just kind of feels like this endless cycle of going to this person. Now you got to come back to this person. Now you got to go back to that person. And
Yeah, and
so
nobody actually takes her by the hand and like actually
no,
leads her to that next,
right,
thing or to
right.
like whatever it is because they're all kind of like, well, I don't know. Like,
Yeah,
and that's
right.
so reality. I mean, that was
Yeah,
what filmed in 1973,
yeah,
2026, 100%, so many people's experience, with
yeah,
the, anything medical really, or,
yeah.
whether it be mental, physical,
Hmm.
whatever, is just, getting bounced around, no answers.
Right,
And
right.
as a parent, so from my perspective too, I mean, that was what I was more afraid of to watch this movie, in the first
Mm,
place was it's not the
interesting.
gore. It's not so much, I mean, like really doesn't bother me that much, even the vomit scenes, but it was, the psychological issues that you go through here of like like you said, the mother
Yeah.
not being able to help her kid, and running up against these, ridiculous mansplaining scientists who,
Hmm.
not only don't know what's wrong, but won't help her, to
Right,
get to an
right.
answer,
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
But
yeah. So one evening, Chris returns home to find the house strangely empty except for a sleeping Regan. Sharon, Chris's assistant, played by Kitty Wynn, explains that Burke Dennings had been watching Regan while she went to go pick up some medication. Moments later, an acquaintance arrives with devastating news. Burke has been found dead at the bottom of the steep staircase outside of the house, directly beneath Regan's bedroom window. Right after receiving this news, Chris and Sharon watch as Regan crab walks or spider walks down the stairs into the hallway. And
Yeah.
this scene is only in the director's cut. So you don't get this. This wasn't in the theatrical
It's
release
to
of this
say, like,
movie.
no
This is
matter how a nerd you've become to horror movies, and this is like become a trope in horror movies, the first time you see that fucking crab walk, it's like Jesus Christ. Like that is
Yeah,
that is like one of the most truly horrifying thing I've
it's
ever seen in my life.
pretty terrifying. It's
Yeah, I mean, it'd
absolutely
get me every time.
terrifying.
Apparently,
Me
they had to hire
too.
like a special gymnast to do it, and even the gymnast got hurt doing it. I used
Yeah.
to think, for some reason, I heard because there's so much freaking rumors about this movie.
So much.
I heard that it
Yeah.
was cut because it was too scary. I'm just like, given all the other shit in this movie, that I mean, I don't know, like I
Yeah.
can't see cutting it for that reason, but like whatever. I don't know why what the hell was cut.
Yeah, I've heard about two or three different reasons why it was cut, and that is one of the reasons that I've heard. I think the other reason was like this movie is very long. So it's already a long movie. So it's like, what do we cut out? And then I think, was it you, Andrea, that said that you heard that it was cut because it was too soon? Like we
Yeah.
didn't quite know, like this would have, it's just too soon in the movie,
Right.
right?
It
This
kind of
kind of would have,
amplified her possession, I think, too
yeah,
early.
yeah.
Like, I mean, because you
Hmm.
cut it, you do get progressive. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
until the end where she's like her eyeballs are.
Um, Detective William Ketterman, played by Lee J. Cobb, begins investigating the death. He questions Father Karras and reveals that Burke's head had been completely twisted backwards when he fell. Uh, Ketterman later tells Chris that the only plausible explanation is that Burke was pushed from Regan's bedroom window. So not long after that, Regan suffers another horrifying episode. She's now completely covered in blood and scars. She violently masturbates with a crucifix, rotates her head completely backwards, and begins speaking in Burke Denning's voice. She also slaps Chris hard as hell across the face. And this is the one of the film's most infamous and shocking scenes, like we were just been talking about. Fearing for her safety, Chris confines Regan to her bedroom and restrains her to the bed.
That's where Chris, the actress that played
Oh,
Jessica,
yes.
she gets
Yes.
her. I think she actually shattered her like coccyx and like her back, but she also had like
Right.
multiple fractures and had to like basically was injured for the rest of the movie,
Yeah.
like for
Yeah.
all the rest of that.
Yeah.
So the poor Linda Blair, when the bed was shaking so much, I had read that her harness malfunctioned,
Mm-hmm.
which looking at that scene, so I was actually reading it while I was watching the thing that's what, one of the injuries. That's horrifying that if her safety
You
harness
can see
wasn't
it.
working, she was like, and that those were real screams of
Yes.
pain
Yes.
and suffering. Because I think, Marty, you mentioned earlier, too, like the amount of abuse on the women,
Yes.
especially in this movie. I mean, he effed around with the guys too, or the director, I should say,
Right.
messed around with the guys too, but not to the extreme
Right.
of what he did with the women. And I think both Linda Blair, I mean, as a young girl, but also, Ellen Burstyn, like they were in this, like they were completely devoted to their
Yes.
roles to the point that I think that they could be convinced to do like, put themselves in those situations where like that to me, I know this is way back in 1973, but there's supposed to be a trust, or
Right.
like that the director and like that they're gonna the crew's gonna protect the
Mm-hmm.
actors, and I think he deliberately failed in those kind of things to get the reactions that he
Mm-hmm.
wanted. I mean, yeah, Ellen was breaking bones, screaming in pain as she got yanked back.
Yes.
And he
Not
kept
to
that
be yanked
hidden.
so hard and demanded
Yeah.
not to be yanked so
Like,
hard. And
yeah.
then the director agreed. And then she saw him mouth to the guy
Yes.
pulling him,
Yes.
yank
Right.
her hard, don't hold
Yes.
back. And she got really hurt. And I
Yeah.
mean, and there's a lot of speculation too with the malfunctioning harness that was also done deliberately to give a more realistic performance. There's a very famous movie Shar and I watched. It's called In the Shadow of the Vampire, and it's basically makes fun of this whole idea. It's got William Dafoe in it as like this obsessive director who wants to get like the most realistic vampire
Hmm.
movie ever by torturing the actors and putting them into horrible situations and just like now I'm going to get the real performance because
Right.
like, they're actually, suffering in this kind of a way. So you see a
Yeah.
lot of that. And in the and in the Shadow of the Vampire was intended to be a critique of that male Hollywood director, which there was a lot of them in the 70s, who were more than happy to, beat the shit out of their
Yeah. Like
actresses.
sacrifice basically the
Yeah,
actor.
for the shot or whatever.